Socrates was one of the most important figures in Western philosophy, celebrated for his contributions to ethics, theory of knowledge, and dialectical reasoning. Born in Athens, Greece, in the year 469 BCE, to a stonemason, Sophroniscus, and a midwife, Phaneretes, Socrates likely received a basic education. Little is known about his childhood, but he served as a soldier in the Peloponnesian War. Socrates is best known for his method of questioning, now called the Socratic method, a form of dialectical inquiry aimed at uncovering assumptions and encouraging critical thinking. Unlike many philosophers of this time, Socrates wrote nothing down, with his ideas instead being known through the works of his students, especially Plato. His philosophy revolved around the pursuit of wisdom and the belief that virtue is central to a meaningful life. He famously declared, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Socrates challenged the moral complacency and intellectual arrogance of his peers, advocating for self-knowledge and ethical introspection. His questioning often exposed contradictions in people's beliefs, earning him both admirers and critics. He rejected wealth and materialism, living modestly, and engaging with Athenians in public spaces. In 399 BCE, Socrates was tried and executed for allegedly corrupting the youth and being ungodly. He defended himself eloquently, refusing to abandon his principles, even if it meant saving his life. He accepted his death by drinking poison. This resulted in him becoming a martyr for free thoughts. Socrates profoundly influenced Western philosophy, shaping the work of Plato, Aristotle, and countless others. His emphasis on reason, dialogue, and ethical inquiry remains central to philosophy and education. Plato was a monumental figure in Western philosophy, a student of Socrates, and teacher of Aristotle. Born into a wealthy and influential Athenian family, either in the year 428 or 427 BCE, his early life was marked by privilege and an education in music, poetry, and gymnastics. The political turmoil of Athens during his youth, combined with the execution of his mentor Socrates, deeply influenced Plato's philosophical outlook. Plato founded the Academy in Athens, one of the first institutions of higher learning in the Western world, where he taught and wrote extensively. His works, written as dialogues, feature Socrates as a central figure and explore topics such as ethics, politics, metaphysics, epistemology, and education. The Republic, one of his most famous works, presents his vision of a just society ruled by philosopher kings and outlines his theory of forms, which claims that the material world is a shadow of a higher, unchanging reality. Plato's philosophy emphasized reason, the pursuit of truth, and the importance of a virtuous life. His allegory of the cave illustrates the transformative power of education in philosophy, advocating for the enlightened to guide society. He also contributed significantly to discussions on the nature of knowledge, proposing that true understanding comes from contemplating the eternal and perfect forms, rather than relying on sensory experience. Plato's ideas laid the foundation for much of Christian theology, political theory, and philosophy. His academy remained a hub of intellectual activity for centuries, shaping thinkers like Aristotle. Plato died around 347 BCE, and his works are some of the most influential in history, inspiring debates on ethics, politics, and the nature of reality for over 2,000 years. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher whose work shaped Western thought across numerous disciplines, including science, ethics, politics, and metaphysics. Born in Stagira, a small town in northern Greece, in the year 384 BCE, he was the son of Nicomachus, a physician to the Macedonian royal courts. This early exposure to medicine and biology may have sparked his lifelong interest in the natural world. Orphaned as a child, Aristotle was raised by a guardian and sent to Athens at age 17 to study at Plato's academy, where he remained for 20 years. Although deeply influenced by Plato, Aristotle diverged from his teacher's ideas, emphasizing empirical observation and rejecting Plato's theory of forms. After Plato's death, Aristotle spent time traveling and conducting biological research before being invited to tutor Alexander the Great in Macedonia. This role gave him access to resources and experiences that informed his later works. Around 335 BCE, Aristotle returned to Athens and established the Lyceum, a school where he taught and conducted research in diverse fields, including logic, ethics, politics, rhetoric, biology, and physics. His methodical approach and insistence on systematic observation laid the groundwork for modern science. Key works include Nicomachean Ethics, which explores the concept of virtue in the good life, and Politics, a written work on governance and the organization of society. Aristotle's philosophy emphasized the importance of reason, moderation, and practical wisdom. He also came up with the idea of the golden mean, advocating for a balanced, virtuous life. He would also later propose a comprehensive cosmology and theories of causation that influenced medieval and Renaissance thought. Aristotle died in 322 BCE in Euboea, and his contributions to philosophy, science, and logic have had a profound impact, establishing him as one of history's greatest intellectual figures, earning him the title the philosopher in the Middle Ages. Confucius was born as Kong Chu in the state of Lu, which is modern-day Shandong, China, in the year 551 BCE, and he was a Chinese philosopher whose teaching shaped the moral and social fabric of East Asia. Raised in modest circumstances, his father, a military officer, died when Confucius was young, leaving the family in poverty. Despite these challenges, Confucius developed a deep love of learning, studying history, music, and traditional religious acts. Confucius worked as a teacher, attracting disciples who saw his guidance on ethics, governance, and proper conduct. His philosophy centered on the cultivation of virtue, moral integrity, and the importance of harmonious social relationships. He emphasized 5 core virtues: benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faithfulness. These principles form the basics of Confucianism, a system of thought that deeply influenced Chinese society and governance. Confucius believed in the power of education to transform individuals and advocated for rulers to lead by example, practicing moral virtue rather than relying on coercion. He idealized a hierarchical but benevolent social order with filial piety, which means respect for parents and ancestors, as a cornerstone. His teachings were compiled after his death, which occurred in the year 479 BCE, by his followers and the Analects. Confucius spent most of his life traveling between states, offering his counsel to rulers, but his political ambitions were largely unfulfilled. Despite this, his ideas gained prominence after his death, especially during the Han Dynasty, when Confucianism became the state philosophy. Confucius is known as one of the most influential figures in world history, and his ideas continue to shape ethical thought, education, and governance in East Asia and beyond, promoting values of respect, duty, and harmony that resonate across multiple cultures and through thousands of years. Augustine of Hippo was an early Christian philosopher whose ideas significantly shaped Western Christianity and philosophy. Born on November 13th, 354, in Thagaste, which is now modern-day Algeria, Augustine grew up in a Romanized North African family, and his father, Patricius, was a pagan, while his mother, Monica, was a devout Christian who greatly influenced Augustine's later spiritual journey. As a youth, Augustine was highly intelligent but rebellious, indulging in pleasures and questioning religious doctrines. He studied rhetoric and philosophy in Carthage, where he encountered Cicero's writings, and became captivated by the pursuit of truth. Dissatisfied with Christianity, he turned to Manichaeism, a dualistic religious sect, and later to Neoplatonism, which profoundly influenced his thoughts. Augustine's life took a transformative turn when he moved to Milan in 384. Influenced by the sermons of Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan, and his mother's persistent prayers, Augustine converted to Christianity in 386. He was baptized by Ambrose in 387 and returned to Africa, where he founded a community of monks before becoming the Bishop of Hippo in 395. Augustine's major works include Confessions, an introspective spiritual autobiography, and The City of God, a defense of Christianity against Roman critics. His philosophical contributions focused on the nature of God, free will, and the problem of evil. He argued that humans are inherently sinful due to the original sin, and emphasized divine grace as essential for salvation. Augustine's combination of Christian doctrine with classical philosophy, specifically Neoplatonism, shaped medieval thought and laid the groundwork for Western theology. His ideas on faith, predestination, and the relationship between church and state have influenced countless philosophers. Augustine died on August 26th, 430, during the siege of Hippo by the Vandals. His legacy endures as one of Christianity's most profound and influential thinkers. Thomas Aquinas was a Dominican monk and theologian whose combination of faith and reason profoundly influenced Western philosophy and Catholic theology. Born in Roccasecca, Italy, in the year 1225, to a noble family, Aquinas was the youngest of 9 children. His family expected him to pursue a career in the church, but they initially opposed his decision to join the Dominican order, which valued poverty and wandering preaching. Despite family resistance, including imprisonment by his brothers, Aquinas remained committed to his calling. He studied in Naples, Paris, and Cologne under renowned scholars like Albertus Magnus. He became deeply influenced by Aristotelian philosophy, which he sought to reconcile with Christian theology. His intellect earned him the nickname Angelic Doctor, and one of his most significant works is the Summa Theologica, a combination of Christian doctrine and Aristotelian philosophy. In this text, he addressed topics like the existence of God, the nature of morality, and the relationship between faith and reason. Aquinas is best known for his 5 ways, a logical argument for the existence of God, including the cosmological and theological arguments. Aquinas believed that faith and reason are harmonious, with reason serving as a tool to understand divine truth. His ethical philosophy emphasized natural law, proposing that moral principles are rooted in human nature and discernible through reason. Aquinas' ideas shaped Catholic doctrine, influencing the development of scholasticism and serving as the foundation of modern Catholic education. In the year 1323, he was officially declared a doctor of the Church. Thomas Aquinas' integration of philosophy and theology left a large impact on both religious and secular thoughts. His works continue to remain important in discussions on metaphysics, ethics, and the interplay between science and religion, ensuring his place as one of history's greatest thinkers. René Descartes was a French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist, often called the father of modern philosophy. Born in La Haye in Touraine, which is now Descartes, France, in 1596, he was the youngest of 3 children in a moderately wealthy family. His mother died when he was young, and he was raised primarily by his grandmother. Descartes was educated at the Jesuit College of La Flèche, where he excelled in mathematics and classical studies, later earning a law degree from the University of Poitiers. Descartes traveled extensively throughout Europe, serving in the military and engaging with scientific and philosophical communities. His groundbreaking philosophical ideas are laid out in works like Discourse on the Method and Meditations on First Philosophy. In these texts, Descartes saw a foundation for knowledge that could withstand doubt. His famous assertion, cogito ergo sum, which translates to I think, therefore I am, established self-awareness as the first certainty. Descartes emphasized rationalism, arguing that reason and mathematics provide the basics for understanding the natural world. He developed Cartesian dualism, suggesting there is a distinction between mind and body. This idea had profound implications for philosophy, psychology, and science. And in mathematics, Descartes introduced the Cartesian coordinate system, merging algebra and geometry, which became foundational for modern calculus and analytical geometry. His work in optics, physics, and anatomy also advanced scientific understanding. In 1649, Descartes moved to Sweden to tutor Queen Christina, but the harsh climate affected his health, resulting in his death from pneumonia in 1650. Descartes' influence over philosophy, science, and mathematics, including his method of doubt, emphasis on reason, and dualistic framework, reshaped intellectual thought, laying the groundwork for the Enlightenment and modern scientific inquiry. His legacy endures as a central figure in Western philosophy. John Locke was an English philosopher whose ideas on empiricism, government, and individual rights profoundly influenced modern thought and political systems. Born in Rington, Somerset, in 1632, Locke was raised in a Puritan household. His father, a lawyer and soldier, ensured he received a good education, and he attended Westminster School and later Christ Church in Oxford, where he studied philosophy, medicine, and the natural sciences. Locke's interest in medicine led him to work with prominent scientists, including Robert Boyle and Thomas Sydenham, and he became a Fellow of the Royal Society. His political career began when he became secretary to Anthony Ashley Cooper, the Earl of Shaftesbury, a relationship that deeply influenced his political philosophy. Locke's most significant works include an essay concerning human understanding, where he argued that the mind is a blank state at birth, and knowledge is derived from experience through sensory perception and reflection. This idea laid the foundation for empiricism and challenged notions of innate ideas. In his 2 treatises of government, Locke advanced the concept of natural rights, such as life, liberty, and property, arguing that governments must derive their power from the consent of the governed. These ideas were revolutionary, opposing absolute monarchy and justifying resistance to tyrannical rule. Locke's philosophy profoundly influenced the Enlightenment, shaping modern liberalism, constitutionalism, and theories of education, as expressed in some thoughts concerning education. His political theories inspired the American and French revolutions, directly influencing documents like the U.S. Declaration of Independence. John Locke died in 1704 in England, leaving a legacy as one of history's most influential thinkers. David Hume was a Scottish philosopher, historian, economist, and essayist, renowned for his influential works in philosophy and contributions to the Enlightenment. Born on May 7, 1711, in Edinburgh, Scotland, Hume grew up in a modest but educated family. His father died when Hume was young, leaving his widowed mother to raise him and his siblings. As a child, he was very gifted, entering the University of Edinburgh at age 12, where he initially studied law, but gravitated toward philosophy and literature. Hume is best known for his empiricism and skepticism, which profoundly challenged traditional philosophical ideas. His major works include A Treatise of Human Nature, where he argued that human knowledge derives entirely from sensory experience, rejecting innate ideas. He introduced the problem of induction, questioning the logical justification of assuming that future events will mirror past experiences. Hume's views on causation, morality, and religion were groundbreaking yet controversial, with his criticism of traditional arguments for God's existence earning him a reputation as an atheist. In addition to philosophy, Hume authored The History of England, a multi-volume work known for its narrative style and historical analysis. He also engaged in political economy, influencing thinkers like Adam Smith. Hume's philosophy laid the foundation for later thinkers such as Immanuel Kant. He influenced disciplines ranging from psychology to political theory, emphasizing empirical evidence and critical thinking. Despite being largely unappreciated in his time, he was celebrated in his later years, living a comfortable life in Edinburgh. He died on August 25, 1776, leaving a legacy that continues to shape modern philosophy. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a Swiss-born philosopher, writer, and composer whose ideas influenced the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, and modern political and educational thought. Born on June 28, 1712, in Geneva, Rousseau's mother died shortly after his birth, and his father fled Geneva when Rousseau was 10, leaving him in the care of relatives. As a young man, Rousseau wandered Europe, supporting himself through various jobs, including tutoring and music copying. Rousseau's major philosophical works include Discourse on the Origin and Basis of Inequality Among Men, The Social Contract, and Emile, or On Education. In these writings, Rousseau explored themes of human nature, freedom, and the structure of society, and he argued that humans were naturally good but corrupted by civilization. In The Social Contract, he introduced the concept of the general will and the idea that legitimate political authority rises from a social agreement among free and equal individuals. In Emile, Rousseau outlined a philosophy of education emphasizing natural development and individual freedom, which greatly influenced progressive educational theories. His critique of institutional religion in this work led to a lot of backlash, and he was forced to flee France. Rousseau also contributed to the Romantic movement, emphasizing emotion, nature, and individuality in his works, such as Confessions, an early example of modern autobiography. Rousseau's ideas had a profound impact on the French Revolution, inspiring calls for equality and democratic governance. His emphasis on natural rights and the general will remains central to political philosophy. Despite his controversial life, marked by conflict with his peers and being exiled, Rousseau died on July 2, 1778 in Ermenonville, France, but his vision of freedom and equality continues to resonate in political, educational, and philosophical discourse. Immanuel Kant was a German philosopher who is considered one of the most influential figures in Western philosophy. Born on April 22, 1724, in Königsberg, which is now Kaliningrad, Russia, Kant was raised in a modest household. His parents were devout pietists, which instilled in him a strong work ethic and moral discipline. Kant's early education emphasized religion and Latin, but his intellectual curiosity led him to study philosophy, mathematics, and science at the University of Königsberg. Kant spent most of his life in Königsberg working as a private tutor and later as a professor at the university. His critical philosophy revolutionized the field, beginning with his seminal work, Critique of Pure Reason. In it, Kant sought to bridge the divide between rationalism and empiricism, arguing that while knowledge begins with experience, it is also shaped by innate structures of the mind. He introduced the concept of the categorical imperative, a cornerstone of his moral philosophy, which asserts that actions should be guided by principles that could be universally applied. Kant's critique of practical reason and critique of judgment expanded his ideas to ethics, and his philosophy emphasized human autonomy, rationality, and the idea that individuals are ends in themselves, not means to an end. Kant's work reshaped metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and aesthetics, influencing philosophers such as Hegel, Marx, and contemporary thinkers. His ideas support modern concepts of human rights, moral responsibility, and international peace. Despite never traveling far from Königsberg, Kant's intellectual reach was vast, and he was known for his disciplined routine and modest lifestyle, with him passing away on February 12, 1804. His legacy endures as a cornerstone of Western philosophy, shaping debates on reason, morality, and human dignity. Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel was a German philosopher whose ideas profoundly influenced modern thought, specifically in philosophy, history, and political theory. Born on August 27, 1770, in Stuttgart, Germany, Hegel grew up in a middle-class Lutheran family. He excelled academically, studying theology and philosophy at the Tübinger Stift, where he befriended future philosophers Friedrich Hölderlin and Friedrich Schelling. Hegel began his career as a private tutor and later taught at universities, eventually securing a position as a professor at the University of Berlin in 1818. His philosophy is most famously outlined in works such as Phenomenology of Spirit, Science of Logic, and Philosophy of Rights. Hegel's philosophy is grounded in the ideas of dialectics, a process of development through contradictions and their resolution. He proposed that history unfolds through a dialectical process driven by the world spirit, seeking self-realization. Central to his thought is the concept of the spirit or mind, and the idea that reality is a rational, interconnected whole. Hegel's ideas on freedom and the state had a major impact. He argued that individual freedom is realized within the framework of ethical life, encompassing family, civil society, and the state. Hegel's legacy extends to art, religion, and science, shaping movements such as German idealism, Marxism, and existentialism. Despite critiques of his abstract ideas, his work remains central to understanding modernity and human developments. Hegel died on November 14, 1831, during a cholera outbreak in Berlin. His dialectical method and vision of history continue to influence philosophy, politics, and cultural theory to this day. Karl Marx was a German philosopher, economist, historian, sociologist, and revolutionary whose ideas shaped modern political thought and inspired movements worldwide. Born on May 5, 1818, in Trier, Germany, Marx grew up in a middle-class Jewish family that converted to Lutheranism to avoid anti-Semitic restrictions. Marx excelled academically and studied law, history, and philosophy at the universities of Bonn, Berlin, and Jena. Influenced by Hegelian philosophy and the materialism of Ludwig Feuerbach, Marx developed a critical view of society, focusing on class struggle and the conditions of the working class. He became a journalist, writing for radical newspapers, but his revolutionary ideas forced him into exile in Paris, Brussels, and eventually London. Marx's most significant works include the Communist Manifesto, co-written with Friedrich Engels, and Das Kapital. In these works, Marx introduced concepts like historical materialism, which is the idea that economic structures shape social and political life, and the critique of capitalism as being inherently exploitative. He argued that the working class would overthrow the ruling class, leading to a classless, stateless society based on communal ownership. Marx's ideas laid the foundation for Marxism, influencing socialist and communist movements globally. He also contributed to the political economy, analyzing capitalism's contradictions, including the tendency for crises and inequality. Despite enduring poverty and personal hardship, Marx's intellectual legacy is profound. His critique of capitalism inspired revolutionary movements such as the Russian Revolution and continues to inform discussions on inequality and labor rights. Marx died on March 14, 1883 in London, leaving a polarizing legacy. While his ideas have been debated and adapted, his analysis of power, class, and economy remains an important aspect of modern social and political theory. Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher, poet, and cultural critic whose provocative ideas challenged the foundations of Western thought. Born on October 15, 1844, in Raaken, Prussia, Nietzsche's father, a Lutheran pastor, died when Nietzsche was 5, leaving his family in modest circumstances. Raised in a household dominated by women, Nietzsche excelled academically, eventually studying philology at the University of Leipzig. At just 24, Nietzsche became a professor of philology at the University of Basel, but chronic health issues forced him to resign in 1879. He spent much of his later life in solitude, writing many works while traveling across Europe, and some of his key works include Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Beyond Good and Evil, The Genealogy of Morals, and The Will to Power, which was released after his death. A central concept to his philosophy is the Übermensch, which translates to Superman, an individual who transcends conventional morality to create their own values. He famously declared God is dead, critiquing religion and traditional morality as constraints on human potential. Nietzsche also explored themes of nihilism, the idea that life lacks inherent meaning, and the will to power, a fundamental driving force in individuals and societies. His style, marked by poetic language, made his philosophy very influential. Though largely unrecognized in his lifetime, Nietzsche's ideas profoundly impacted existentialism, postmodernism, and psychology. His critique of morality and power dynamics inspired thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Michel Foucault, and Carl Jung. In 1889, Nietzsche suffered a mental breakdown, likely due to syphilis, and spent his final years in incapacitation, resulting in his death on August 25, 1900. Controversially associated with later political movements, Nietzsche's work continues to provoke debate and inspire interpretations across disciplines. Ludwig Wittgenstein was an Austrian-British philosopher who profoundly influenced 20th century philosophy, specifically in logic, language, and epistemology. Born on April 26, 1889, in Vienna, Austria, Wittgenstein was the youngest of 8 children in a wealthy and cultured family. His upbringing was both privileged and challenging, marked by intense familial expectations and personal struggles with identity and purpose. Initially studying mechanical engineering in Berlin and Manchester, Wittgenstein became fascinated with the foundations of mathematics, leading him to study philosophy under Bertrand Russell at Cambridge. His early work culminated in the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, a groundbreaking text that proposed a picture theory of language, asserting that language's role is to represent facts about the world. Wittgenstein believed this work solved all philosophical problems, and he left academia to live a simple life as a schoolteacher and monastery gardener. However, Wittgenstein returned to Cambridge in the late 1920s, where he radically revised his views, marking the beginning of his later philosophy. In the Philosophical Investigations, one of his works that was published after his death, Wittgenstein critiqued his earlier work and explored the idea of language as a social activity governed by language games. He argued that the meaning of words is determined by their use in specific contexts, challenging rigid definitions of language and concepts. Wittgenstein's ideas reshaped analytical philosophy, influencing areas such as linguistics, cognitive science, and the philosophy of mind. Despite his strict and mysterious personality, as well as his unconventional teaching methods, he left a profound legacy. Wittgenstein died on April 29, 1951, in Cambridge, England, and his philosophical contributions, emphasizing clarity, the limits of language, and the connection between thought and reality, remain foundational to modern philosophical discourse, bridging logic and human experience in innovative ways. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below which philosophers are your favorites, and subscribe if you would like to see more videos like this one. Thank you again, and goodbye.